Could the bill get stuck at the Budget Committee today?
Well, it really could. We're going to find out in about an hour and a half whether or not the tax reform bill is going to move forward in the Senate, because there are two key senators who are so far uncommitted to the bill, Republicans, either one of whom could stall the bill if they don't vote in favor of it this afternoon. The most important, I think, is Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, who has a lot of concerns about the pass-through rate. He wants it to be more generous. Johnson himself was the owner of a pass-through business, and he has said that if he's not satisfied with the changes that Mitch McConnell can make, then he's not going to vote for the bill, which would stall it in committee. The problem is, if McConnell were to offer more generous pass-through benefits, it might have the effect of increasing the deficit, and that, of course, would jeopardize the vote of Tennessee Senator Bob Corker, who is also as yet uncommitted because he has concerns about the deficit. So it's not yet clear whether or not Mitch McConnell is going to be able to square the circle by 2:30.
So let's bring in now our colleague from Washington, Sahil Kapur. So Sahil, we've just been talking about Ron Johnson. He said that he's at no right now. He'd like to get to yes. The president has said we should be able to work something out. Are they about to work something out on that pass-through question?
Yeah, they are trying to work this out. They are trying to address Ron Johnson's concern. He's not seen as an expendable vote when there's so many other senators on the bubble, most notably, as Josh alluded to, the deficit hawks led by Bob Corker. There's also James Lankford and Jeff Flake, who are pushing for some sort of backstop, some sort of backup trigger that would potentially automatically impose higher taxes or some kind of mechanism to recover the lost revenue if these economic growth projections end up being over-optimistic. Corker said this morning that these growth assumptions are basically made up, his words, and that he wants to make sure that Congress actually sticks to its word and doesn't blow up the deficit as a result of this bill. It's very difficult to do, and it's a hard circle to square at the end of all of this when these concerns about red ink are so fundamental to the bill. It's hard to just tweak your way out of this, and they have to do it without alienating the conservatives who want the deepest tax cut possible.
I think it becomes a bit trickier now to argue for these tax cuts when you don't really have a clear guideline of what the economic effects would be. We have this survey by the University of Chicago that asks economists that what if a tax reform will actually lead to higher growth. Guys, if we can bring up that full screen, you can see that most economists think that they disagree with the fact that tax reform could actually lead to higher growth. A lot of people actually think that the economic impact is pretty uncertain. As you can see, they're strongly disagree that this will actually lead to growth in a decade. How much more does this complicate matters for these senators that are trying to push tax reform forward, Josh?
Well, it certainly complicates matters because I think the public has absorbed that most independent analyses of the tax cut plan show that the growth it's likely to achieve is significantly less than the growth that Republican leaders are claiming, including President Trump. So that's one concern. I think there's also a concern about the makeup of the bill. The fact that so many of the benefits skew to corporations and the wealthy, that creates a political problem that is very worrisome if you are a swing state senator like a Ron Johnson or somebody who knows you're going to have to face voters 12 months from now and don't necessarily want to have voted in favor of something that is so generous to the wealthy and will eventually raise taxes on millions of middle-class people.
So, Sahil, skewing it toward the wealthy may be a problem for senators, but what about the problem of not getting anything done? When this president came in with a Republican House, Republican Senate, said we're going to do repeal the health care bill, didn't get that done. Infrastructure we haven't heard about, and this is the last one left. Do they have an option of failing at this?
Well, that's really the fuel that's driving this whole effort. Number one, their ability, their desire to go home for Christmas, not completely empty-handed, be able to tell their constituents they did something all year in their first, something major all year in their first year, in about a decade of controlling the White House, the House, and the Senate. It would be devastating to finish this year without a significant legislative achievement. The other piece of this is that Republican donors, in particular, are eager to get this done. They strongly support this bill on the merits, even if it's unpopular politically. And this is something that a number of Republican legislators have been pretty open about. The money's going to dry up if we don't get this through.
Sahil, are we headed for another government shutdown right now?
It doesn't look good at the moment. We had this extraordinary spectacle earlier today of Democratic leaders canceling a meeting with the President of the United States after the President attacked them on Twitter earlier this morning, said he doesn't expect a deal. This is an intriguing dynamic that's shaping up because Republicans control all of Washington. It's their responsibility to keep the government funded, but they need Democratic votes to do it. If they don't get Democrats to the table, they don't have a deal, and the government shuts down on December 8th at midnight. We will see where this goes, but the important thing to know is that the party that runs the show usually takes the blame for that sort of thing.
So what about it, Josh? Will they shut down the government after all?
Well, it looks more like it today because I'm not sure that Trump understands how many cards Democrats hold in this situation. And I think that Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi both realize that a government shutdown would probably be worse for Republicans and their tax reform plans than it would be for Democrats.